Okay, today we're going to do just a bit of an extension of what we did in straight lines. If you remember back to straight lines in a triangle and where they cross, at the time we said if you worked out the perpendicular bisector of each line in the triangle, they went through a point which was the center of the circle that went through all 3 points. Okay, we called it the circumcenter. You may or may not remember that. But basically for this, what we have to do is work out where the center is. So we want the perpendicular bisector, 2 of them. So any 2 sides would do. Then use simultaneous equations to work out where they cross. Okay, and that's our center. Once we've got our center, okay, the distance from the center to any one of these 3 points will be the same because that's the definition of a circle. And that will be our radius. So we can use our distance formula from the center we've got to give us our radius to any one of these 3 points. And then when we've got that, we'll simply use what we were doing yesterday to write down the equation of the circle. Once we've got the center and the radius, we can just substitute in the numbers and write it down. Okay, let's make a start on this one then. Now, I could use any of the 2, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the perpendicular bisector of AB and of BC. I could have done AC, but I only need 2 of them, so I decided not to do AC. What I might notice at the start, which would save me a bit of time, is that AB is horizontal because it's got the same y coordinate. But if I didn't spot that, I could still work it out like this. Remember, first of all, we want the midpoint. For the perpendicular bisector, remember, we need the midpoint, then work out the gradient of the side. And remember, we want m1, m2 equals -1 because we want the opposite, the perpendicular to that. So the midpoint of AB, remember we just add the points together and divide by 2, so 0 plus 8 over 2, 5 plus 5 over 2, which gives me 4, 5. Okay, so I got the point 4, 5. I also need the gradient of AB, and if I work that out, we've got 5 minus 5 on the top, so that's just going to give us 0. So we know that's horizontal, so we know the gradient of the perpendicular, let's call it MP, will be infinite. So we're looking for an equation for our line of x equals a number. Now the only point we know on our line is this midpoint, so it must be x equals 4. Okay? Remember, the midpoint's the only point you know on this perpendicular bisector, so that's the one you have to use. So I'm going to call that equation 1, because that's the first one I've worked out. I now need to work out another one, and I said I'd work out BC. So the midpoint of BC is going to be 8 plus 7 over 2, and 5 plus 12 over 2. If we work that out, that gives me a midpoint of 7.5, 8.5. So that's my midpoint. I also need my gradient of BC. If I work out the gradient, remember we're going to have 12 minus 5 over 7 minus 8. So that's -1 on the bottom, 7 on top, gives me -7, doesn't it? So remember the perpendicular, m1, m2 is -1, so we're going to need 1/7, aren't we? Because -7 times 1/7 gives you -1. So our equation is going to be y minus 8.5 equals 1/7 x minus 7.5. Now, get rid of the fraction there, the 1/7, by multiplying by 7. Okay, so if I do that, I'm going to get 7y minus, now that'll be 56 and 3.5 is 59.5, equals just what we've got inside there. Okay, now if I take the x across to this side and the number the other way, we've got 7y minus x equals minus 59, well, it becomes plus on this side, so it's going to give you 52, isn't it? Because minus 7.5 plus 59.5 is 52. That's our second equation. Let's call that equation 2. But if we look at the first one, it's a nice one, because x equals 4. So if I plug 4 into there, I've got 7y minus 4 equals 52. So 7y equals 56. So we've got y equals 8. So we now have the centre being 4, 8. Okay, so I've got my centre. The next thing I need is I need to work out the distance from the centre to any one of these points. So let's do it from, A to the centre. If we do that, remember our distance formula? So we're going to have 4 minus 0 squared plus 8 minus 5 squared. If you work that out, that gives you 5. Okay, so that's our radius. Our radius is 5. We've got everything we need now, because remember we've got x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals r squared. So that's a. So a is 4, b is 8, and r squared is 5 squared, which is 25. So writing that down, you've got x minus 4 squared plus y minus 8 squared equals 25. And that is the equation of our circle. Now, these are quite long and tricky. Well, they're not tricky, but they're long and fiddly questions, yeah? And it's easy to make a mistake on the way through. So that's why, rather than just the answers with the 2 questions like this I've asked you to do, I've given you the full solutions. Because you'd get, if we're talking about marks for something like this, the first one, x equals 4, you'd probably get 2 marks for that bit. You'd get, for that down to that bit, you get another 3. For solving the simultaneous equations, you'd get the 1. For working out your radius, you get another 1. And for writing your equation, you get that. So you've got 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. That thing would be out of 8. So if you make an arithmetic slip but continue using the correct method, you wouldn't necessarily lose that many marks. It might make the arithmetic horrific, but you wouldn't lose many marks. Okay, we'll have a look at the next example next. Okay, our second example, but the method's exactly the same. We've got to work out the perpendicular bisector of 2 of the sides. So I'm going to do our perpendicular bisector of RS, then the perpendicular bisector of ST. Okay, so remember it's midpoint, work out the gradient, then use M1, M2 to find the perpendicular. So that's what we're going to do with both of these. So the midpoint of RS is just add the coordinates together, so minus 4 minus 2 over 2, and minus 113 plus 13 over 2. That gives me minus 3, 6. Then the gradient of RS, if we're working out the gradient, it's going to be 13 plus 1 is, so it's 13 plus 1 over minus 2 plus 4, which gives me 14 over 2, which is 7. So the perpendicular is just minus 1/7. Okay, so we have y minus 6 equals the gradient, minus 1/7, x plus 3. Let's get rid of the 7th by multiplying by 7. You get 7y minus 42 equals minus x minus 3. So take that across there, you're going to have x plus 7y, add 42 to each side, you'll get 39. So we'll call that equation 1. That's the perpendicular bisector of RS. Remember, midpoint, and work out the gradient perpendicular to that. And y minus b equals m, x minus a. Okay, next one I'm going to do ST. So the midpoint of ST is going to be, where are we? S to t, so it's going to be 8 divided by, well, let's do it, minus 2 plus 10 over 2. 13 minus 3 over 2. If you work that out, it's going to give you 8 over 2 is 4, 10 over 2 is 5. So we've got 4, 5. For the midpoint, the gradient. So, gradient, we've got minus 3 minus 13 is minus 60. Then we've got 10 plus 2 is 12. Okay, if we work that out, gives us that gives you minus 4 over 3. So the perpendicular, yeah, just turn it upside down and change the sign, so it's 3/4. So we have y minus 5 equals 3/4 x minus 4. Okay, we're going to go up there. So I'm going to continue up here. Right, so we need to tidy this up a bit. Multiply by 4 first of all, and you will have 4y minus 20 equals 3x minus 12. Okay? Take everything to one side, and you've got 4y minus 3x equals 8. Okay, that's our second equation. Remember, our first equation was x plus 7y equals 39. So what I'm going to do is, let's get rid of the x's, let's multiply by 3. Okay, for the first equation. So that will give me 3x plus 21y equals 117. Okay, I can then add that to this equation here, and the x's will cancel out. Yeah, so you're going to get 25y equals 125. So from that, we've got that y equals 5. And if I put it back into this one, that's x plus 35 equals 39. So what we have is, that'll give us x equals 4. So we know our centre is 4, 5. Radius-wise, remember, we can go from the centre to any of our 3 points. So let's pick that one, okay? So you've got 4 plus 4 squared plus 5 plus 1 squared. That gives me 10. Okay, that was just going from R to the centre. Radius is 10. So we know x minus 4 squared plus y minus 5 squared will be equal to 10 squared, which is 100. Okay. Now, as I said, I've given you 2 questions like these to have a go at. Little bit fiddly. Try and be careful on your way through them. Just remember, work out 2 perpendicular bisectors, work out where they cross. That's your centre. Okay, when you've got your centre, you can use your distance formula to go from your centre to any of the 3 points to work out your radius.